Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we view ourselves in relationship to other people, and I think it's a very important topic at this time in our culture. Yesterday, I was talking about the need to really evaluate how we look at the different situations in our culture right now and the cultural changes. And as the Bible talks about us not being conformed to this world if we're Christians, it's easy to say, well, I'm not conformed to this world or this age because I'm not like that particular group of people. But we really have to look at the fact that our culture gives us these categories that it's easy to get molded into the different categories and the size that our culture gives us. And I want to follow up on that and just talk about something else that really has been on my heart, and it's just how do we look at other people right now at this time in our culture. And I think this is really something for me and for everybody just to really take a look at. How do you look at other people? And for those of us who are familiar with the Bible, if I bring up the term Pharisee, you already have thoughts about that. And I want to ask this question for you. What was the problem with the Pharisees? What was the problem with the Pharisees? I know a lot of us would give the answer, well, they trusted in their own righteousness. And that's a good answer. I mean, that's definitely gets at a problem for them. And we're going to see that because I want to share something from the Bible here. We're going to see that in what Jesus says. But really, there's something else that I think we miss too. And it's something we really have to take a look at. Yes, they were trusting in themselves. And if we're Christians, we know we have to trust Christ. But there's something else that is talked about, and you see it here in Luke chapter 18, verse 9. It says, He, this is Jesus, also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and looked down on everyone else. Now that's an interesting comment Luke uses there about certain people. Yes, they trusted that they were righteous, but another thing that he says about them is that they looked down on others. Other versions put that as they despised others or they had contempt for others. But the idea here is that they're really looking at themselves as better than other people. So one of the problems with the Pharisees, and you do see that here, is that they were trusting in themselves that they were righteous. But another thing that you see describing them is that they looked down on others. And so Jesus tells a story to address this. He says, 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee, and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee was standing and praying like this about himself. God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, greedy, unrighteous, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of everything I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but kept striking his chest and saying, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you, this one went down to his house justified rather than the other, because everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Powerful words of Jesus there. And they really point out something that I know a lot of us know this, that we're not supposed to think that we're better than other people. And one of the tricky things is that if you have something in your head, something in your head, it's easy to think that you've got it. But, even though we know we're not supposed to look down on others, we know that mentally, it's still easy to feel and act that way. And I hope we'll really look at that, think about that right now at this point in our culture, that it's really easy right now to feel like we're better than people around us. And this is a caution for me too. I think at this moment in our culture right now, it's just easy to feel like, okay, I know how I'm looking at this situation and I feel like I'm right. And it's easy to look down on other people and really just kind of have contempt for certain people. So I say this really as a caution to myself, but everybody right now, because I just see that there's this temptation and tendency right now to think we've got it right. And again, that's what I see with the Pharisees. They trusted in themselves that they were righteous, that they were just, and then they looked down on others. So we may know that we're not supposed to do that, but it's still how we can feel and how we can act in reality, even though we know better. We're actually really feeling like, yeah, those people, they're not getting it and I'm better than them. So let me just say it this way, that the way that you feel about other people is an indication of how you view yourself. The way that you feel about other people is an indication of how you view yourself. So even though you may know better, I'm not thinking that I'm this ultra-righteous person, but you know what? If right now you're despising certain people, having contempt, looking down on others, that can be an indication that you really do feel yourself to be righteous and better than them. So we've really got to take a look at that right now at this point in our culture, because I just think it's such a temptation and a tendency. And you know, as I was talking about yesterday, we have lines in this culture that are being drawn and different groups that people are being put into. And then when we get into a certain group, it's really easy, and we don't even really think about it, to look down on people in the other group. And I really see the same attitude as what Jesus is addressing here, that we think we're righteous, we're just, and the other people are the ones that are not as good. Now, I know there's a lot behind that, but that's my point, is that the culture is creating these scenarios in which it's easy to think and feel that way. So let me give you some examples right now. You know, we have the word woke, and some people say it's important to be woke. Some people say it's a bad thing to be woke. But I just see this as one example of, if you're woke, you might see yourself as on the in crowd, or if you're not woke, you're against woke, you might see yourself as on the in crowd or the just righteous crowd. And so when we have these lines that the culture draws, it's easy for us to think that I'm on the better side and those people over there are lower. Another hot topic issue right now is Black Lives Matter and police, and those get put on different sides. And which side are you on? And I have to tell you, I know black people that have been really hurt badly in their lives. They've dealt with so much difficulty because they're a black person. And so I can really sympathize with that, knowing those people and hearing some of the things that they've gone through. But you know what? I also know police and their families, and I know that they have difficult situations too that they have to deal with. And to be honest with you, I admire people from these different groups. And so I think it's really important to recognize they're all people, whether they're someone who, for whatever reason, identifies with Black Lives Matter, or there's someone who identifies with police, or whatever group. You know, they're all people, and we have to keep that in mind. It's so easy to just depersonalize everything, and then ultimately to treat people with contempt, to look down on them. So, kind of in summary, what I'm saying here, it really is a follow-up to yesterday. I need to know what is right. I need to discern what is the good and perfect will of God. And you know, our culture is giving us all of these categories that tells us this is the way you need to look at it, this is the way you need to look at it. But I think we have to have a view that transcends that. But beyond having the right view, which can only be given to us if we allow God to show us, we also have to have the right attitude. I want to not only have the right view as best as I possibly can, and I do have my own opinions on things. I know everybody does, but I want to make sure that I also have the right heart. And that's very challenging during this time. We're being tempted to have this attitude that I'm really concerned about. And I think, again, as Christians especially, we have to think about rising above this and thinking about what Jesus said here. Who is truly just before God? It's actually the person who's humble, right? It's not the person who crosses the right T, dots the right I's, and has all the right views. It's actually the person who is humble. The one who humbles himself will be exalted. So I know a lot of us, we know these things, but we just have to look at how do we view other people, and what does that say about how we view ourselves? Even though we might know the right thing, what are we feeling and how are we acting toward other people? And do we see ourselves as better than other people? If we do, we're not really being humble. It really says something about having to get our attitude in check before God. And that was Jesus' point. The person who was actually just, surprisingly in this story, was the tax collector, the one who really wasn't doing it right according to their culture. And so he had a humble attitude and was saying, God, I need your mercy. And you know what? That's an attitude that we all need to have. And if we have that humble attitude before God, It'll help us to remember we're not better than other people, and so we shouldn't treat them that way. So I'm not going to let the culture tell me, here's a side you need to take, and if you take this side, you're the one who's better. No, I'm going to say, you know what, before God, I've got to be humble, and I'm not better than anybody. Regardless of my viewpoint on a certain situation, I know that I need God's forgiveness, I need God's mercy, and therefore I'm going to treat others with mercy, regardless of where they stand. So I hope that's an encouragement to you. It's just a reminder that even if you're trying to do the right thing, make sure you have the right attitude. And that is really challenging, especially at this moment in our culture. I know I need that check. I need to be reminded of that. And so I thought I'd share that with you. Thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you for listening to my thoughts from A Frisch Perspective.